15 years had passed since Earth's destruction, and the galaxy burned with the light of human vengeance. The Xerian Empire, which had once controlled 43 star systems, now held barely half that number. Their outer territories had fallen to human assault fleets that appeared from nowhere and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Grand Admiral of the Human Resistance Fleet, stood in the command center of the massive space station that had grown from the old New Haven mining base. The facility now housed 2 million survivors and served as the headquarters for humanity's war effort. Status report, he requested from his aide, Commander Kate Lewis. Our forces have liberated the Centauri system and made contact with the surviving Centauri population, Lewis reported. The aliens are requesting to join our alliance against the Xerians. Morrison studied the tactical display showing newly liberated systems marked in blue. Each one represented another species freed from Xerion slavery, another potential ally in the growing coalition against their former oppressors. What do we know about their capabilities? Morrison asked. The Centauri are primarily engineers and builders. Their technology focuses on construction and manufacturing rather than weapons. But they've offered to help us build larger ships and expand our industrial capacity. Admiral Ben Hayes entered the command center carrying datapads filled with intelligence reports. At 65, he had become the most feared human commander in Xerian space. His fleets struck without warning and left no enemy survivors to report what they had encountered. The liberation of Vega Colony is complete, he announced. The Vegan insectoids have agreed to share their swarm coordination technology in exchange for protection from Xerion retaliation. Morrison nodded approvingly. The Vegans had been enslaved by the Xerions for over 300 years, forced to work in their manufacturing facilities. Their natural ability to coordinate complex group activities would be invaluable for managing large fleet operations. Dr. Lisa Carter arrived with her latest research findings. Her hair had gone gray over the years, but her mind remained as sharp as ever. The technologies she had developed now powered the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. The quantum manipulation systems are ready for deployment, she announced. We can now phase entire fleets through solid matter, including planets and artificial structures. Defensive applications? Morrison asked. We can make our bases completely undetectable and unreachable. The main research facility on Asteroid Prime is now existing in a parallel dimensional space. Even if the Xerians find its location, they won't be able to touch it. Hayes studied the technical specifications with interest. Offensive applications? Carter's expression darkened. We can phase weapons directly through enemy shields and hull armor. Their defensive systems become completely useless. The three leaders of humanity's resistance movement understood what this meant. After 15 years of careful preparation, they finally possessed technology that made them superior to their enemies in every measurable way. Captain Steve Wright commanded the Special Operations Division from his base on the captured Xerion, station at Wolf 359. His teams had perfected the art of asymmetric warfare, turning enemy infrastructure against itself in ways the aliens never anticipated. The communications network in the Rigel sector is now under our control, he reported during the weekly command conference. Every message the Xerians send through that system is being intercepted and decoded by our intelligence teams. Any indication they're aware of the compromise? Morrison asked. None. As far as they know, we're just equipment problems and system failures. They've replaced the hardware 3 times, but they don't understand that we're rewriting their software at the quantum level. Wright's innovations in cyber warfare had given humanity access to Xerion communications, navigation systems, and even weapon controls. Enemy ships sometimes found their own weapons turning against them in the middle of battle. Captain Alex Turner led the diplomatic corps that was building alliances with newly liberated species throughout the galaxy. Unlike the Xerians, who ruled through fear and oppression, humans offered partnership and mutual cooperation. The crystalline Thek have agreed to share their matter synthesis technology, Turner reported. In exchange, we're providing them with defensive systems to protect their homeworld. The Thek were master builders who could reshape matter at the molecular level. Their technology would allow human ships to repair themselves during combat and manufacture ammunition from raw materials found in space. What about the aquatic Zephyrians? Morrison asked. They're still deciding. 300 years of slavery has made them cautious about trusting any spacefaring species. But they're willing to provide organic computing systems in exchange for guarantees of independence. Morrison understood their hesitation. The Zephyrians lived in the oceans of water worlds and had no interest in galactic politics. They just wanted to be left alone to pursue their art and philosophy. Amy Sullivan, now a squadron commander, led the assault on the Xerion fortress world of Sigma Draconis. Her fighters moved through space with an organic grace that confused enemy targeting systems. The ships responded to her thoughts as much as her control inputs thanks to Zephyrian bioneural interfaces. Phoenix Squadron, prepare for phase shift assault, she transmitted to her pilots. Remember, we're not just fighting for revenge anymore. We're fighting to free every species the Xerions have enslaved. Her fighters vanished from normal space and reappeared inside the planetary defense grid, bypassing shields and automated weapons. Within minutes, the orbital defense platforms were burning wreckage. The ground assault that followed was unlike anything seen in previous human operations. Instead of simply destroying Xerion military installations, Amy's forces carefully preserved civilian infrastructure and protected non-combatant populations. The humans had learned that true victory required building something better than what they destroyed. Engineer Paul Bennett, now Director of Advanced Weapons Research, worked with teams of human and alien scientists in laboratories that spanned multiple star systems. The fusion of technologies from different species had produced innovations that none of them could have achieved alone. The stellar ignition device is ready for testing, he reported to Morrison. We can now trigger controlled fusion reactions in star systems, creating temporary hyperspace corridors or disrupting enemy fleet movements. Morrison studied the weapon specifications with mixed feelings. Humanity now possessed the power to destroy entire star systems, but using such weapons would make them no better than the Xerians who had burned Earth. Defensive applications only, he ordered. We don't fight genocide with genocide. Bennett nodded. Understanding the moral complexity of their situation, the line between justice and revenge was often thin, and they had to be careful not to become the monsters they fought against. On the Xerion homeworld of Xerios Prime, Fleet Commander Zexthul faced a situation that his military training had never prepared him for. Half of his empire was in open revolt, with former slave species joining the human alliance. His fleets were being systematically destroyed by enemies who appeared from nowhere and vanished before his forces could respond. Sir, we've lost contact with the Tau Ceti garrison, reported his aide. That's the 15th fleet to disappear this month. Zexthul stared at the tactical display showing the shrinking boundaries of Xerion-controlled space. The red markers that indicated his fleets and bases were being replaced by blue markers, representing human-allied systems at an alarming rate. How many ships do we have left? He asked. Approximately 800 vessels scattered across 22 systems, but many of those are trapped by human blockades and unable to reach positions where they could be effective. Zexthul had spent his entire career conquering other species and administering their worlds. The possibility of losing to his former subjects had never occurred to him. The Xerion Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Send a message to all fleet commanders, he ordered. Fall back to the core systems, abandon the outer territories, and concentrate our forces around the homeworld. Teacher Jennifer Blue stood before a classroom of children in the Education Center of New Haven Station. These young people, now in their teens, had grown up knowing only war and exile. But unlike their parents, they also knew victory and hope. Who can tell me the difference between conquest and liberation? She asked. A girl named Emma raised her hand. Conquest is taking something for yourself. Liberation is freeing someone from oppression. That's right, and why is that distinction important for our war against the Xerians? A boy named Danny answered. Because if we just replace them as the rulers of the galaxy, we become what we fought against. Jennifer nodded approvingly. These children understood concepts that many adults struggled with. They would inherit a galaxy freed from Xerion oppression, but they would also inherit the responsibility of building something better The liberation of the Rigel system marked a turning point in the war. The Rigelian energy beings possessed technology that could manipulate matter at the subatomic level, turning raw elements into any desired compound or structure. Combined with human tactical innovations and Centauri industrial capacity, 10 years after Earth's destruction, War Commander Veltar of the Zirion Empire stared at reports that made no sense. 3 of his patrol fleets had vanished in the past month. Not destroyed in battle, not captured, simply gone. One day they were at their assigned positions. The next day their transponders went silent. "What do your analysts believe is happening?" he asked his intelligence officer. "Equipment failures, sir, perhaps gravitational anomalies or unstable jump points. The sectors where the fleets disappeared are known for spatial distortions." Veltar was not convinced. In his 40 years of service, he had conquered 12 different species and administered dozens of systems. He had learned to recognize the signs when a subject population was becoming restless. But the humans were extinct. His own fleet had turned their homeworld to glass 10 years earlier. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Vengeance. The ship looked nothing like the old human vessels that had been destroyed defending Earth. This was something new, built from salvaged alien technology and human innovation. It could phase in and out of normal space, becoming invisible to Zirion sensors. Its weapons could punch through alien shields like they were made of paper. "Target acquired," reported his weapons officer, Lieutenant Sam Parker. "Zirion heavy cruiser traveling alone, no escort vessels." "Are we recording?" Morrison asked. "Yes, sir. Full sensor data on all alien systems and responses." Morrison nodded. Every engagement was a learning opportunity. Dr. Carter's teams studied the recordings to understand alien technology better. Admiral Hayes used them to develop new tactics. Captain Wright analyzed them to find weaknesses in enemy formations. "Fire when ready," Morrison ordered. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes. The Zirion cruiser's shields failed under the first salvo of human plasma cannons. Its hull cracked open like an egg when the quantum torpedoes hit. The alien crew never had time to send a distress signal. Morrison watched the debris scatter into space. Another small victory in their growing campaign of revenge. Admiral Ben Hayes commanded the main human fleet from his headquarters, deep inside the New Haven asteroid complex. The walls of his office were covered with star charts showing every known Zirion position in the galaxy. Red markers indicated enemy fleets and bases. Green markers showed successful human attacks. There were a lot of green markers. "Sir, we have confirmation on Operation Silent Thunder," reported Commander Kate Lewis. "Captain Wright's squadrons hit all 6 targets simultaneously. Complete success, no survivors, no distress signals." Hayes marked 6 more enemy positions with green on his chart. The Zirions were beginning to pull back from their outer territories, concentrating their forces around more important systems. They were reacting to the pressure even if they didn't understand what was causing it. "What's our next target?" Lewis asked. Hayes pointed to a system marked in blue. "Kepler Station. It's a major supply hub for their forces in this sector. Intelligence suggests they're using it to coordinate responses to our attacks." "That's a heavily defended position, sir. They have over 50 ships stationed there." Hayes smiled coldly. "Good. It's time to show them what we've really become." Dr. Lisa Carter worked in her expanded laboratory complex, now spread across 3 different asteroids. Her teams had achieved breakthroughs that would have taken decades under normal circumstances. The pressure of war and the need for survival had accelerated human scientific development beyond anything in their history. "The phase shift generators are ready for fleet-wide deployment," she reported to Morrison during their weekly meeting. "Any ship equipped with the new technology can become effectively invisible to Zirion sensors." "How long can they maintain the phase shift?" Morrison asked. "Up to 6 hours with the current power systems, long enough for major operations." Morrison studied the technical specifications. Human ships had always been smaller and faster than Zirion vessels, but now they could also become invisible. The tactical advantages were enormous. Young engineer Paul Bennett had become one of the most important people in the human resistance. His innovations in weapon design had given human ships firepower that matched vessels 10 times their size. His latest creation was a torpedo that could phase through shields and detonate inside enemy hulls. "We're not just catching up to their technology," he told Carter. "In some areas, we're surpassing it." "How is that possible?" she asked. "They've been spacefaring for thousands of years." "That's exactly the problem. They've been using the same basic designs for so long that they've stopped innovating. They built an empire on technological superiority, but they never had to adapt or improve." Carter understood what he meant. Humans had been forced to innovate or die. Every new weapon system, every improved shield generator, every tactical breakthrough was born from desperate necessity. Captain Amy Sullivan led her fighter squadron through the debris field that had once been a Xerion supply convoy. Her pilots flew ships that were barely recognizable as human technology. They moved like living things, responding to thought as much as control inputs. "Phoenix Leader, this is Phoenix 5, came a voice over the communications channel. "I'm detecting a faint energy signature from the third transport. Could be survivors." Amy brought her fighter around to investigate. Standing orders were clear. No survivors, no witnesses, no evidence that humans still existed. But she had learned to be careful. Sometimes the Xerians tried to fake being disabled to lure human ships into traps. Her sensors showed a single life sign aboard the damaged transport. She armed her weapons and moved in closer. The alien was badly injured, trapped in the twisted wreckage of his ship's bridge. When he saw Amy's fighter approaching, his eyes widened with impossible recognition. "Human," he whispered into his emergency transmitter. "The humans are still alive." Amy's plasma cannon turned the transport's bridge to vapor before the transmission could be completed. On the Xerion homeworld of Xerios Prime, Fleet Commander Zexthal studied reports from across his empire. Equipment failures were increasing. Entire fleets were vanishing without explanation. Some of his commanders whispered about ghost ships and impossible weapons. "Sir, we've lost contact with the garrison fleet at Vega Colony," reported his aide. "How many ships?" 37 vessels, including 2 dreadnoughts. Zexthal felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. Not fear of death in battle, which was honorable, but fear of an enemy he could not see or understand. "Double the patrols in all sectors," he ordered. "I want continuous sensor sweeps and regular check-ins from all fleet commanders." The Battle of Kepler Station began at 0300 hours, ship time, when Admiral Hayes led 200 human vessels out of phase shift directly on top of the Xerion defensive positions. The aliens never saw them coming. War-Commander Veltar was aboard, his flagship, when the attack began. One moment his sensors showed empty space. The next moment they were surrounded by human ships that shouldn't have existed. "All vessels, engage immediately," he ordered. "Send a priority message to Fleet Command. The humans are alive." But the human ships were already jamming all communications. Veltar watched in horror as his carefully arranged defensive formations were torn apart by weapons and tactics he had never seen before. These weren't the desperate refugees who had fled Earth's destruction. These were warriors who had spent 10 years learning how to kill Xerions. The battle lasted 22 minutes. When it was over, every Xerion vessel was destroyed or disabled. Veltar's flagship burned as human boarding parties searched for survivors, and intelligence data. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vengeance as his crews secured the station. Around him, his officers coordinated the systematic destruction of everything the aliens had built there. "Sir, we've recovered their complete database," reported his intelligence officer. "Fleet positions, supply routes, command structures, everything. What about prisoners?" 17 survivors, including War Commander Veltar." Morrison walked to the detention area where the captured aliens were being held. Veltar looked up at him with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "You were supposed to be extinct," the alien said. "We were supposed to be many things," Morrison replied. "We were supposed to live peacefully on Earth. We were supposed to raise our children in safety. We were supposed to explore the galaxy as friends to other species." He leaned closer to the alien commander. "But you changed all that when you burned our world. Now we're something else entirely." Morrison turned to leave, then stopped. Your empire studied our civilization, but you never understood human nature. We don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemies never threaten anyone else. Again. The interrogation of the Zerion prisoners revealed the location of major fleet bases and supply depots throughout their empire. More importantly, it confirmed that the aliens were beginning to understand they faced organized resistance, not random equipment failures. Hayes studied the intelligence reports in his command center. They're pulling back their fleets, consolidating around their core systems. Are they preparing for major offensive action? Morrison asked. No. They're scared. For the first time in their history, the Zerians are fighting an enemy they don't understand. Carter joined the meeting with her latest research findings. 5 years had passed since the burning of Earth, and the galaxy had grown quiet. The alien ships that called themselves the Zerion Empire had moved on to other conquests, satisfied that humanity was extinct. Their massive fleets now terrorized worlds in distant sectors, adding new species to their list of conquered civilizations. But in the empty spaces between stars, humanity endured. Captain Jake Morrison guided his ship through the asteroid field, where New Haven Base was hidden. The mining station had grown into something much larger over the years. Tunnels stretched deep into the largest asteroids, filled with workshops, living quarters, and laboratories. From the outside, it looked like an abandoned mining operation. Inside, it housed the heart of human resistance. Dr. Lisa Carter worked 16 hours a day in her research facility, carved from the solid rock of Asteroid 7. The laboratory was filled with salvaged alien technology, pieces recovered from the wreckage of Zerion ships that had been unlucky enough to encounter human raiding parties. "Show me the power readings again," she said to her assistant, Paul Bennett. Paul was a young engineer who had been working on cargo haulers when Earth fell. Now he built weapons that no human had ever imagined. He pulled up the holographic display showing their latest creation. "The alien power cores operate on principles we're just beginning to understand," he said. "But when we combine them with our fusion reactors, we get energy outputs that are off the charts." Lisa nodded as she studied the data. The Zerians used technology that was thousands of years more advanced than human science, but they had grown lazy. Their ships all followed the same basic designs, used the same weapon frequencies, employed the same defensive patterns. They had conquered so many species that they had stopped innovating. Humans, on the other hand, had no choice but to innovate. Admiral Ben Hayes stood in the command center of New Haven, watching displays that showed the positions of every human ship in the galaxy. The fleet had grown from a few dozen vessels to over 300, all hidden in remote systems or disguised as civilian traffic. His aide, Commander Kate Lewis, approached with a datapad. "The latest reports from our scout ships, Admiral." Hayes read through the intelligence summaries. "The Zerions have established garrison fleets in the former human territories, but they're minimal forces. Most of their military is focused on new conquests in the Andromeda sector." "They think we're extinct," Lewis said. "Good. Let them think that." Hayes had spent the last 5 years transforming desperate refugees into the most disciplined fighting force he had ever seen. Every human who could hold a weapon had been trained. Every ship captain had learned tactics that would have been impossible with the old human fleet structure. The survivors had advantages that the Zerions couldn't understand. Human ships were small and fast compared to the massive alien vessels. Human crews could make decisions quickly without waiting for orders from distant commanders. Most importantly, every human fighter knew exactly what they were fighting for. Amy Sullivan climbed out of her fighter craft after another successful raid. Her squadron had just returned from hitting a Zerion supply convoy near the old Earth system. The mission had gone perfectly, with no human casualties and complete destruction of the enemy ships. "Any survivors?" asked the debriefing officer. "Negative," Amy replied. "Standard procedure." The rule was simple and absolute. No Zerion could be allowed to report that humans still existed. Every attack had to look like equipment failure, pirate raids, or accidents. The aliens had to continue believing that humanity was extinct. Amy walked to the memorial wall where the names of Earth's dead were engraved in metal. 8 billion names covered the curved surface of the tunnel, She found her family's names and touched each one gently. "We're still here," she whispered. "We're still fighting." In the engineering sections of New Haven, teams of human technicians worked on captured Xerion technology. They had learned to reverse engineer alien systems and improve them in ways their creators had never considered. Xerion shields were powerful but operated on fixed frequencies. Human-modified shields could shift frequencies in microseconds. Xerion weapons were devastating but followed predictable firing patterns. Human weapons used randomized sequences that made them nearly impossible to defend against. Morrison attended the weekly commanders' meeting in the main conference room. Around the table sat the leaders of humanity's scattered fleets and hidden bases. There was Captain Steve Wright, who commanded the stealth attack squadrons. Dr. Carter represented the research division. Admiral Hayes ran military operations. "Our latest intelligence suggests the Xerions are preparing for a major offensive against the Centauri Collective," Wright reported. "They're pulling forces from garrison duty throughout their empire." "That gives us opportunities," Hayes said. "Lightly defended targets, reduced patrols, supply lines stretched thin." Carter leaned forward. "My teams have finished analyzing the wreckage from last month's raids. We've identified critical vulnerabilities in their shield generators and weapon systems." Morrison looked around the table at these people who had become his family. "Are we ready to move to the next phase?" "The question is whether we want to tip our hand yet," Hayes said. "Once we start hitting major targets, they'll know we're still active." "Let them know," Amy Sullivan said from the back of the room. "I'm tired of hiding." Several other commanders nodded agreement, but Morrison held up his hand. "We stick to the plan. Small raids, no survivors, maximum confusion. We're not ready for open warfare yet." "When will we be ready?" asked Captain Alex Turner, who commanded the largest human fleet group. "When we can hit them so hard and so fast that they can't recover," Morrison replied. Meanwhile, in the Xerion Empire's capital system, War Commander Zek Zathul reviewed reports from across his territory. Equipment failures were increasing. Supply convoys were disappearing. Some of his subordinates whispered about ghost ships and impossible attacks. Zek's Thul dismissed such talk as superstition. The humans were extinct, destroyed by his own fleet, 5 years earlier. Whatever was causing these problems, it wasn't the organized resistance of a species that no longer existed. Back at New Haven, children who had been babies when Earth burned were now old enough to understand what had happened to their world. They attended classes in the converted storage areas, learning mathematics and science and history. But they also learned about the Xerions, about the attack on Earth, and about humanity's promise of revenge. Teacher Jennifer Blue stood before a class of 20 children, all between 8 and 12 years old. Behind her, a holographic display showed the solar system as it had been before the attack. "Who can tell me why the Xerions attacked Earth?" she asked. A girl named Emma raised her hand. "Because they were afraid of us." "That's right. They saw how fast humanity was spreading across the galaxy, how quickly we were learning and growing. They decided to stop us before we became too strong." A boy named Danny asked, "Are we going to attack them back?" Jennifer looked into the eyes of these children who would grow up knowing only war and exile. "Someday, when we're ready. When we're strong enough to make sure this never happens again." In the deep maintenance tunnels of New Haven, older survivors worked on projects they didn't discuss openly. Weapons that could crack planets, ships that could phase in and out of normal space. Technologies that would have horrified the humans who had lived before Earth's fall. The loss of their homeworld had changed humanity in ways that went beyond technology. They had become harder, more focused, more unified in purpose. The old conflicts between nations and ideologies had been burned away in Earth's destruction. What remained was a single goal shared by every human alive. Dr. Carter stood in her private office, looking at a piece of Earth rock that someone had salvaged from the ruins. The surface was partially melted from the Xerion bombardment, but it was still recognizably from home. "We're not the same species we were 5 years ago," she said to Morrison, who had come to discuss her latest research. Is that good or bad? He asked. It's necessary. The humans who lived on Earth could never have survived what we've been through. They could never have built what we're building. Morrison nodded. He had seen the change in himself and in everyone around him. They were becoming something new, something forged in the darkness between stars. Outside New Haven, human ships continued their invisible war against the Xerian Empire. Each raid was small and precise. Each attack left no evidence of human involvement. Slowly, steadily, the alien empire was beginning to weaken from thousands of tiny cuts. And in the hidden depths of their asteroid bases, humanity prepared for the day when they would step out of the shadows and show the galaxy what they had become. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UCS Ranger and watched the stars through the main window. His ship was 3 days out from Earth, carrying supplies to the mining colonies in the outer systems. The crew worked quietly around him, checking instruments and running their daily tasks. Everything felt normal, peaceful even. The communication officer looked up from her station. Captain, we're getting a priority message from Earth Command. Jake walked over to the communications panel. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was tight with fear. All vessels, this is Admiral Peterson at Earth Command. We are under attack. Repeat, Earth is under attack. Unknown alien vessels have entered the system and are targeting major population centers. Jake felt his blood go cold. How many ships? He asked into the microphone. We count over 200 vessels, Captain Morrison. They're unlike anything we've ever seen. They're not responding to any communications, they're just firing. The bridge crew stopped what they were doing and stared at the communication panel. For a moment, nobody moved. Earth had never been attacked before. The human colonies had been spreading across the galaxy for 50 years, and they had never met hostile aliens. What are your orders, Admiral? Jake asked. All military vessels are to return to Earth immediately. All civilian ships are to stay away from the inner system. We don't know what we're dealing with here. Jake looked at his navigation officer. Set course for Earth, maximum speed. But even as he gave the order, Jake knew they were too far away. At their best speed, it would take them 6 days to reach Earth. Whatever was happening there would be over long before they arrived. Over. The die. Next few hours, the messages from Earth grew more desperate. The alien ships were massive, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. They moved with perfect coordination, like they were all controlled by one mind. Their weapons turned entire cities into glass in minutes. Dr. Lisa Carter was working in her laboratory on Mars when the attack began. She was one of the best scientists in human space, specializing in alien technology that human explorers had found on dead worlds. Her work had helped humanity understand how to build better ships and better weapons. When the first reports came in, she dropped everything and ran to the communications center. The hologram display showed Earth from orbit, but what she saw made her sick. Bright flashes covered the planet's surface as the alien weapons struck. The beautiful blue and green world was turning gray and black. How long do we have? She asked the officer in charge. The aliens haven't attacked any other colonies yet, he said. But if they can do this to Earth, nowhere is safe. Lisa nodded. She understood what he meant. Earth was the most defended world in human space, with orbital defense stations and the largest fleet. If Earth could fall this quickly, the scattered colonies didn't have a chance. Admiral Ben Hayes was commanding the defense of Luna Colony when he received the emergency transmission. He had fought in the border conflicts with pirates and had commanded fleets for 20 years. He knew war, but nothing had prepared him for this. Sir, the lunar defense grid is requesting orders, his aide said. Ben watched the tactical display as red markers showed the alien ships moving around Earth. They worked with terrible efficiency, targeting military bases, government centers, and major cities. The human defense fleet tried to stop them, but their ships were destroyed as fast as they could engage. Order all civilian transports to evacuate to the outer colonies, Ben said. Military vessels are to conduct fighting retreats. Don't let them trap our forces. What about Earth, sir? Ben closed his eyes for a moment. Earth is lost. The words hurt to say, but he knew they were true. In 6 hours, the aliens had broken through every defense and were systematically destroying everything on the planet's surface. The few reports still coming through painted a picture of complete devastation. Captain Morrison's ship was still 2 days away when the final transmission came through. The voice was weak and filled with static. "This is Colonel Williams at North American Command. If anyone is receiving this, Earth has fallen. The alien fleet has orbital control and has destroyed all major cities. We estimate 90% casualties. The aliens are now targeting anything that moves on the surface." The transmission cut to static and then silence. Jake sat in his captain's chair and stared at the stars. His home was gone. His family, his friends, everyone he had grown up with was dead or dying. Around him, his crew stood in shocked silence. "Captain," the communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving similar reports from other ships throughout the system. The attack stopped about an hour ago and the alien fleet is pulling back." "Where are they going?" "Unknown, sir. They've left the system entirely." Jake tried to understand what had happened. The aliens had appeared without warning, destroyed Earth in less than a day, and then left. They hadn't tried to communicate or make demands. They had simply erased humanity's homeworld from existence. Over the following days, the scattered human ships began to find each other. The survivors included mining vessels, exploration ships, cargo haulers, and a few military patrol craft. All told, less than 50 million humans remained alive, spread across dozens of star systems. Jake found himself commanding a growing fleet of refugee ships at an abandoned mining station called New Haven. Dr. Carter arrived from Mars with her research data and a burning desire for answers. Admiral Hayes came with the remnants of the Lunar Defense Fleet and a lifetime of military experience. "Why did they do it?" Carter asked during their first meeting in the station's conference room. "Does it matter?" Hayes replied. "They wanted us dead, and they almost succeeded." Jake looked around the table at the other survivors, ship captains, scientists, engineers, and civilians who had lost everything. "The question is, what do we do now?" An old miner named Bill Jackson spoke up. "We hide. We find the deepest hole in space and we stay there until they forget about us." "No," said Amy Sullivan, a young pilot whose family had died on Earth. "We fight. We make them pay for what they did." "Fight with what?" Jackson asked. "They destroyed our entire fleet in one day." Carter leaned forward. "We learn. We study their technology. We find their weaknesses." Hayes nodded slowly. "We become something they don't expect, something they can't prepare for." Jake made the decision for all of them. "We survive first, then we grow strong. Then we make sure this never happens to anyone else." The survivors agreed. In the depths of space, far from the burned ruins of Earth, they began to plan. The aliens thought they had destroyed humanity, but they had only created something far more dangerous. They had created humans with nothing left to lose. 20 years had passed since the destruction of Earth, and the final battle was about to begin. Grand Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UCS Liberty, humanity's flagship, as the largest fleet in galactic history emerged from hyperspace. At the edge of the Xerion home system, 2,000 ships materialized in perfect formation, representing 39 different species united in their determination to end Xerion tyranny forever. Human vessels flew alongside Centauri builders, vegan swarm coordinators, crystalline Thek matter shapers, and dozens of other races that had suffered under alien oppression. "All fleet commanders report ready," announced Commander Kate Lewis. From her position at the communications station, Morrison looked at the tactical display, showing Xerios Prime surrounded by the remnants of the once mighty Xerion fleet. 800 ships arranged in defensive formations around their homeworld, preparing for their final stand. "Open a channel to the Xerion command vessel," Morrison ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the alien flagship. War Commander Zexthul appeared, older and more worn than Morrison remembered from intelligence photos, but his eyes still burned with the arrogance that had doomed his empire. "So the extinct humans have returned," Zexthul said. "We should have been more thorough 20 years ago." You had your chance to show mercy when you burned our world, Morrison replied. Now we offer you the choice you never gave us. Surrender, and your people will be treated with the dignity you denied Earth's children. Zexthul laughed bitterly. The Xerian Empire does not surrender to inferior species. We have ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. Your empire is gone, Morrison said simply. Your fleets are scattered, your slave worlds are free, and your own people suffer under the tyranny you created. End this now, and they can have a future worth living. Never, Zexthul snarled, and cut the transmission. Morrison turned to Admiral Ben Hayes, who commanded the military operations from his position in the fleet's tactical center. Admiral, you may begin the final assault. Hayes nodded grimly. All ships, commence Operation Earthrise. The battle for Xerios Prime began not with a massive bombardment, but with a demonstration of power that the Xerians could not comprehend. Dr. Lisa Carter's quantum manipulation systems activated across the entire human fleet, causing 2,000 ships to phase in and out of normal space like ghosts dancing among the stars. Captain Amy Sullivan led the first wave of fighters through the Xerion defensive lines. Her pilots moved their craft with an organic precision that no purely mechanical system could match. Thanks to bioneural interfaces developed with Zephyrian technology, they slipped between enemy formations like schools of fish, striking at precisely the right moment to disable rather than destroy. Phoenix leader to all squadrons, Amy transmitted. Remember, we're here to liberate, not to exterminate. Disable enemy weapons and engines, but preserve life support systems wherever possible. The Xerion defenders found themselves fighting an enemy unlike anything in their experience. Human weapons phased through their shields, as if they didn't exist. Alliance ships appeared and disappeared at will, striking from impossible angles. Most confusing of all, the attackers seemed more interested in disabling Xerion vessels than destroying them. Captain Steve Wright's cyber warfare teams had spent months preparing for this moment. As the battle raged in space, they launched coordinated attacks on the planet's infrastructure below. Power grids that had oppressed billions of subject peoples for centuries were reprogrammed to serve liberation instead. The planetary defense grid is under our control, Wright reported to Morrison. We're shutting down military installations while preserving civilian infrastructure. Morrison watched the tactical display as Xerion resistance crumbled with shocking speed. 20 years of preparation had given humanity and their allies overwhelming advantages in technology, tactics, and most importantly, purpose. Engineer Paul Bennett coordinated the technical aspects of the assault from his position aboard the research vessel Breakthrough. His teams had developed weapons that could disable enemy ships without killing their crews, technologies that turned the Xerions' own systems against them. The enemy flagship's shields are failing, Bennett reported. We can begin boarding operations, whenever you're ready. Morrison made a decision that would define humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. Prepare boarding shuttles, but weapons are to be set to stun only. We're not here for revenge, we're here for justice. The boarding of Zexthul's flagship was led by Captain Alex Turner and a mixed team of human and allied soldiers. They moved through the alien ship's corridors with careful precision, subduing resistance without unnecessary violence. When they reached the command bridge, they found Zexthul standing beside his command chair, holding a plasma pistol aimed at his own head. The Xerion Empire dies with me, the alien commander declared. We will not live as subjects to inferior species. Turner lowered his weapon and stepped forward. You don't understand. We're not here to enslave you. We're here to give your people the same chance at freedom that you denied everyone else. Zexthul stared at the human officer in confusion. You would rule our worlds as we ruled yours. No, Turner said gently. We would help your people build something better, something based on cooperation instead of conquest, on mutual benefit instead of oppression. The alien commander's hand trembled as he struggled to understand a concept that had no place in Xerion culture. For 1,000 years, his species had known only dominance or submission. The idea of voluntary cooperation between equals was as foreign to him as breathing water. Dr. Carter materialized on the bridge, using her personal phase shift device. carrying a datapad containing intelligence gathered over 20 years of war. "Commander Zexthul, you should know that your empire was already dying before we began our liberation campaign. Your slave worlds were on the verge of rebellion, your technology had stagnated, and your own people were suffering under the weight of maintaining control over so many systems." She handed him the datapad. "We're offering your species a chance to join something better, a galactic community based on mutual respect and shared prosperity." Zexthul read through the intelligence reports with growing amazement. The data showed internal decay throughout Xerion space, civil unrest on the homeworld, and economic systems on the verge of collapse. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why offer mercy to those who showed you none?" Morrison's voice came through the communication system as he beamed aboard the captured vessel. "Because someone has to break the cycle. For 1,000 years, species have conquered other species, enslaving the weak and oppressing the different. It ends here, with us, with this choice." The Grand Admiral walked onto the bridge and faced the alien who had ordered Earth's destruction. "Your people can continue to exist, continue to grow and learn and contribute to galactic civilization. But the age of empires built on conquest is over." Zexthul looked around at the humans and aliens who surrounded him, seeing in their faces not the hatred he expected, but something he didn't recognize, hope for a better future. "What would happen to my people under your rule?" he asked. "They wouldn't be under our rule," Morrison replied. "They would be part of a galactic community where every species contributes according to their abilities and benefits according to their needs. The Xerions have much to offer: advanced engineering, organizational skills, knowledge gained over centuries of space travel." Turner stepped forward. "Your people's talents could be used to build instead of destroy, to explore instead of conquer, to create instead of control." For the first time in his life, Zexthul considered the possibility of a galaxy not ruled by fear. The concept was so alien to his experience that he struggled to comprehend it. "And if we refuse?" he asked. Carter answered quietly. "Then you'll be isolated on your homeworld while the rest of the galaxy moves forward without you. No conquest, no enslavement, just irrelevance." The war for Xerius Prime ended not with the destruction of the enemy fleet, but with its surrender. Across the planet below, Xerion military forces laid down their weapons as news of their commander's capitulation spread through their communication networks. Morrison stood in the main conference room of the captured Xerion command station, now serving as headquarters for the Liberation Fleet. Around the table sat representatives of 40 different species, including several Xerions who had chosen to join the new galactic community. "The war is over," he announced, "but our work is just beginning." Admiral Hayes, his hair now completely gray but his spirit still strong, reviewed the massive logistics of governing a galaxy. "We have over 300 systems to administer, billions of beings to relocate or reintegrate, and entire economic systems to rebuild." Dr. Carter, now recognized as the greatest scientist of her generation, outlined the technological challenges ahead. "We need to develop new forms of faster-than-light communication to coordinate between species separated by vast distances. We need energy systems that can support industrial civilizations without depleting natural resources." Teacher Jennifer, Blue, representing the Education Council, spoke about the next generation. "The children who will inherit this galaxy need to learn cooperation from the beginning.